You are still watching Nigeria Decides on Plus TV Africa. Governor El-Rufai had on the eve of election, the postponed presidential election, announced that 66 persons were killed in a reprisal attack in the area.
And he has received a whole lot of criticism on how he has handled the issue. We still have Peter in the house to look at this situation, as well as Funmi Ayoola Dosunmu, the YPP aspirant House of Representatives of Surulere constituency. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Peter, for still staying with us.
Thank you.
Now, security agencies in Kaduna State confirmed the mass killings of Fulanis in Kajuru Local Government Area of the state, and they pegged the figure, the Nigerian Army pegged the figure at 66. Police did not state any details about the casualty. There are a whole lot of sketchy information, but the criticism that has come so far is that why has that number come from the governor instead of the police?
I think we should start by asking why the report came this late. I mean, this happened Sunday, Monday, and then it was on Friday that the governor... Why did they keep it sealed for so long? And
I
then
remember even the initial figures were still pegged at 10, 15.
Yeah, 10, 15, and then all of a sudden the figures rose to 66. We should first of all, let me start by commiserating with the families of the bereaved. But the truth of the matter is that right now the details are so sketchy that we cannot even be sure that those killings actually took place. We have people who have said they've contacted friends and family in that area, and they say that, you know, they have no such information about any such killings. So where do we go from there?
I think, first of all, the governor has had a reputation for speaking out of turn, if I have to say that, and I say that with respect. But this is a man who, a few days prior to this incident, in making his point known that he wouldn't love for there to be foreign interference in elections, which is not a bad thing to say, went on to use the term body bags. And that caused a conflagration across nations. I know dignitary was supposed to come into Nigeria, but was advised by his government not to come in at the time because of that sort of statement. And over time, we've known him to be, let me be more civil. But yes, so over time, I think he shouldn't have been the one to say that. Now, in security circles, there's a phrase we use: loose lips sink ships. Typically, when there's an incident like that, it's the security agencies that come out to make a statement. Typically, the police spokesman for that state will make a statement, and not the governor.
But the police has been vocal about how arrests have been done. We've had 6 arrests being made connected to this killing, but hasn't come up with the casualty figure. So then why do we have this culture of silence? We sideline or we hush whatever we want to and then highlight the ones we don't want to, especially from our security apparatus? That is unethical behavior, wouldn't you say?
Yes. But I mean, we're in a war, whether we like it or not. There's a war on terror ongoing, and each war is fought according to the strategies available to the leaders of that war, the commanders on both sides. Now, knowing the aim of terrorists, and those who are violent extremists is to instill fear, to cause havoc, to inflate figures. So sometimes we hear of an incident and we think, oh, the numbers are this much. But even from a professional standpoint, I've found out that most of the time, the numbers might be less. And because those numbers are often less, it's not good to just join the terrorists in the agenda unknowingly by inflating those figures. So security agencies might use a strategy of trying to downplay what has happened in the hope that it doesn't scare people more than it should.
But the thing is, if this had happened on a Sunday, why wait all the way till Friday to, I mean, as much as possible, if not for anything, for the families of those who have been killed, or just to alert people so that they can be, you know, safe and keep away from those areas? Why keep it? Was it meant, because there's so many reactions. CAN has reacted and said, the DSS and the IG should, investigate this. Why did you keep it hushed? Does this mean that it was supposed to be some form of political propaganda? Because even when the speech was being made, the issue of Fulani was really highlighted.
Yes.
It wasn't about human beings being killed. It was about Fulanis. I mean, why does that have to be the case?
Go ahead, please.
First of all, if the real story, the story that eventually came out was that it was a reprisal attack. That on Sunday night they had attacked the Mara people, and so they now did a reprisal attack on the Fulanis. That was really, so it wasn't a case of that the Fulanis were just killed. This was, and I think it dates back to as far back as October last year when they killed Galadima.
Yes.
I think it's something that has been building up since then. So it's not something that is new, which is why the government, I'm wondering why the government kept it.
But the government has said that, well, they've denied that killing of Galadima had anything to do with ethnic or religious undertones.
Yes, what were you expecting? The reason I'm saying this is because he mentioned terrorists. And I know that this really isn't the terrorist thing. It's more of ethnic, tribal, and religious. I mean, let's put aside, this is Christian against Muslim. So there's no way you can do away with the religious part of it. That's the honest truth. So if the Fulanis had attacked the Christians and they decided to attack back, now the governor is using it as a political weapon. That is where I have the problem.
Because, a lot of people are also blaming it on the fact that he made... I remember I did an interview with him some time ago, and we were talking about the issue of sensitive statements, the issue of communal clashes, and there have been people, Niger Middle Belt Elders Forum have actually pointed fingers at the governor, saying that he's stoking the fire. He makes statements that causes more of these pockets of violence. And he did have a response. I wish we could play that video, but I'm sure as we're going on we'll look for that video where he tried to explain about the issue of infighting, and he said he was looking at a situation where we could take, this religious sentiments off the table and we see each other as one. But my question was, how do you do this when you seem to be the one in the center of all of this? So how do you unify a people when you have,
seem to be
because he's saying it's something he inherited from 40 years ago, and he cannot change anything in the less than 4 years that he's been in office. How do we handle this situation? Because Kaduna has been a hot spot for a long time.
Yes, it has. I think, like I've heard it said, that everything rises and falls on leadership. He evidently isn't doing as good a job as he should do with the statements he's making. Violent extremism, and I want to separate that from outright terrorism, because violent extremism feeds the ranks of terrorists. Now, it's issue. For instance, the Southern Kaduna People's Union leaders have come out to say that on that Sunday, it was their people who were attacked, and 10 to 11 of that number were killed.
Not 66.
Not 66. Now, the governor didn't make a statement. No, the Southern Kaduna people are saying their own people were slain as well. Yes. And the governor didn't make a statement about their losses. And then, with figures flying from out of space, as the way that he just conjured, he comes out to make a public statement that when the police hasn't made that statement, and I'm pretty sure that national security apparatus would have frowned upon the governor's actions if he's called for a meeting. You don't say things like that. You ought to be more sensitive. You ought to be more. You don't expect people to just abandon their fears when you're the one igniting those fears. So I think leadership. In that state, for instance, he's not done such a good job in leading the people in that wise.
Mariana had earlier said that, well, the Southern Kaduna People's Union has said that, well, the IGP and then the SSS are supposed to conduct independent investigation. But at the end of the day, my question still stands that why is the governor the one having to reel out the figures?
I really don't know. For instance, he said something. He said his. I mean,
it's simple.
We can assume that.
But we have security on the ground. But we have security on the ground who are supposed to be the first people on hand to say we're on top of the matter. They're supposed to have a press briefing and let people know these people are in hospital, investigations are ongoing, these are the numbers we have been able to confirm. Not the governor. So if you say it's political, our security apparatus is compromised.
No, the governor is
what
the
you're
chief
trying to
security
say?
officer of that state. So he can kill a story. He can tell them, hold the story until I'm ready. Yes, it's the chief. And
I agree with you. I agree with you. It's
I'm
not-
sorry.
And so it's politically
As much as a governor is the #1 security officer of any state, does not mean that he can interfere, because the commissioner of police in every state reports to the IGP, and we all know this. He has no such powers to kill a story when security has the powers to do whatever it is and keep the people informed as to bloodshed of that nature.
But the police didn't get into it until after he made his statement. If you notice, it was after that the police started saying,
and then the GOC of one day went on.
Yes, before then the police was completely silent on the case.
But beyond sentiment, do you necessarily think that this figure 66 is exaggerated?
My training teaches me to believe that it's exaggerated. As a security personnel, I mean, from working in security community for over a decade, and worked at the highest levels as well too. I believe the numbers might be exaggerated. Over time, I've been seeing what has happened in different places.
Is it because of where we came from?
But do you then think that was supposed, the supposed exaggeration was supposed to have been used as a tool to ensure that this election was actually postponed? Because some school of thought has said, well, the bigger the number, then you raise the issue that security is not so strong enough to be able to conduct elections. I mean, on the eve of the elections, I doubt that would have been a major factor in deciding whether or not the elections were going to hold in Kaduna. Now, in the larger scheme of things, if you want to look at it from a prism or perspective, it goes down to leadership. So, for instance, you have a national security advisor, you have the intelligence community, you have a whole architecture for security in this country. And if a governor keeps making these errors in judgment in terms of saying what he ought not to say, he ought to have been called to order. And then it takes me back to an interview that the current president gave when he was asked why he hadn't replaced the service chiefs, seeing the losses that our troops, our army, armed forces are incurring at the front lines in the battle against terrorism. And the president said, I paraphrase, that he doesn't want to replace the current set of leaders because, the top brass, because he's not sure that the officers who will take over from them will not be given towards the takeover of the country. And if that's rewarding failure, if they failed on, and one of the reasons, or one of the campaign highlights of their campaign in the run-up to these elections, or when they came into power, was that they would provide security. Many people believe that this government would excel or do better than the previous government in providing security, and they failed in that regard.
No, to be honest, they started off very well. Somewhere along the line. No, let's be fair.
Okay.
They started off, well, we had Boko Haram, it was dwindling.
No, it wasn't. They said they were technically defeated. They were not technically defeated.
Let's be fair. Initially, they started off well. Along the line,
information available to me disputes
that. We've seen things go down south, because initially the concentration of insecurity was just within the northeast, and now it has spread its tentacles. So
kidnappings,
we can't necessarily say
cultism activities. And yet Boko Haram was repelled to an extent, but we also saw how our troops were being somewhat massacred. So again, the winning was cut short somewhat.
Yes, as I said, they started well, but somewhere along the line,
I don't want to give away some information, but if you look at it, you remember when this government assumed power or came to office, one of the things that they did was they did certain things that regarded as playing to the gallery in our system. So they moved the theater of operations of the Nigerian army to Maiduguri, because it was believed that's where the hotbed of terrorism was. But from other information available to other security, to other members of the security community, not just Nigeria, these things were not in that region. You had the borders that were porous. The government did little or nothing to secure those places. So while it seemed to the public that they were mopping up the crisis center, other places were being opened, and you don't fight a war like that.
But the president speaking, sorry, David, the president speaking with Dashawala and CNN did say that we could see that at the time they came into office, Boko Haram had their stronghold in the northeast. And they had about how many local government areas? But as we speak, they barely have one. And for him, that's a win.
The nature of these operations, they don't fight conventional battles. They mutate. These terrorist groups, they don't fight conventional battles. So if he assesses it on that or from that perspective, then it's a flawed assessment. Any security expert who knows his onions will tell you it's not fought that way. So this group mutated into different forms. You had a merger with ISWAP. You had ISIS in West Africa taking place.
The only reason why they would mutate is because they were countered in some area. And so they were trying to fight back.
I mean, if you go to War College, these are pedestrian things.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Human Rights Writer Association, Huriwa, has said that, well, they've described this situation as despicable, outrageous, and termed the statement by the Kaduna State Governor alleging that 66 Fulanis were slaughtered as being false. Now, the body has said that they've decided to petition to the international community, including the International Criminal Court in The Hague, Netherlands, to inform these institutions and world leaders that at the sight of the governor, he has to be arrested. What do you make of this, their stance?
I don't think it's out of place. Let me give an example. If you look at what happened in Rwanda during the genocide in 1994, certain actors, certain people in position made statements that caused the genocide to take place. If you look at what happened in South Africa 2016, 2017, during the xenophobic attacks as well too, a mayor made certain statements that incited people to do certain things. And now, if you situate it locally, it's not out of place to say that.
Well, their excuse is this. They say he must be arrested and prosecuted for crimes against humanity for all of the atrocious killings of Christians by armed Fulani terrorists belonging to Miyetti Allah Cattle Owners Association, who also share the same ethno-religious affinities with the governor.
I doubt that they will be able, the ICC would step in such a manner at this point, especially regarding our nation's sovereignty and the fact that the governor has immunity for the duration of his tenure. If he does leave office in this cycle, or when he does leave office eventually, it is possible he might be investigated, especially because the last statement he made that got him in trouble as well about the body bags has also drawn people from different parts of Nigeria, Ohaneze, Indigbo, Afenifere, even other groups have petitioned the ICC as well. And so I believe he's now a person of interest. So knowing this, I believe and I hope for his sake that he's more careful with the things that he says and he avoids making these statements. He could have not made that statement and everything would have been fine.
Also, the people, he did make a statement about the southern Kaduna people because of these ethnic violences and the clashes that have been happening over the years. They have urged that he picked a running mate that was Christian. But he made a statement that even if he ran with the Pope, he would not satisfy the people of Southern Kaduna, and he's not expecting any votes from Southern Kaduna. In what ways, as we wind this conversation down, can this governor, because, I mean, he's running for a second term, unify the people of Kaduna, even though he says it's a tumultuous, you know, it's a Herculean task to deal with that issue right now in the space of the 4 years that he has. But what would you rather he does, you know, going forward to unify the people and reduce all of this, especially from the things he says?
They say you don't teach a man to use his left hand in old age. I don't think it's
No, I don't think he even wants to. All that is just...
It's grandstanding.
Yeah, see, I don't think he wants to do any form of uniting of the people of the...
but he's the governor of a state, not a governor of a certain
when somebody
section.
has told you clearly that, look, I'm not expecting these people to vote for me, do you really think he cares about them? He really doesn't.
If you remember again, one of the reasons why this sentiment continues to exist is that it's on record in times past, even from a tweet, where he made an allusion to the fact that the blood of any Fulani slain in the course of this was a debt that would be paid no matter how long it took. In other words, alluding to the fact that there will be reprisals of any Fulani killed in this thing. So you have people now who are now looking at this man and saying, we know you've always spoken like this. It's not a new thing to us. In fact, I saw some statements online between yesterday and today of a statement allegedly attributed to him saying that Yorubas acted the way they did at the Abeokuta rally where the president and his entourage were stoned because that's how they are. That's how, as a people, they are.
So if we understand this is an individual that has a tongue that lashes out these sort of words,
then he should not be rewarded with a second term. He should not be rewarded with a second term in office.
My fear is that I hope there will not be a reprisal attack, because of his.
So now we are counting down to Saturday.
I have faith in the...
Do you think we would have a secure Kaduna State as the elections are going to hold? Because if some have said, well, those killings were supposed to ensure that we have a postponement, do you think now that INEC is saying, well, we would ensure we have an election on Saturday, do you think first and foremost security would be ensured? And what sort of deployment as well do you expect to be done in that area, since we've identified it as a hotspot?
The GOC of one div in that region recently, I mean, he just resumed not a few weeks ago, very recently, and he has gone already on to make an assessment of the places where these killings were alleged to have taken place. And I know that he's a man who's given to community relations very well. One of the things that the governor did was that he requested that the people from Southern Kaduna, he requested that our traditional rulers produce the people who killed these people. And it doesn't happen like that. He can't just pull people from the air and say, these are the guys who killed the people, when they're not even sure there were killings that took place. However, this GOC is on a peacemaking mission. He's going around. He's a man who's well-versed in
We have
civil
4
military
days
relations.
to the elections now. Do you think necessarily we would see Kaduna State safe enough to conduct the elections?
These very incredible elections.
I'm optimistic that it's possible.
I believe so.
It's possible, but again, the state actors and non-state actors have to sheath their swords. The governor, I mean, we should just. Is the crisis waiting to happen? It seems every statement he makes is further for Olivia Pope.
If the election, maybe
get him to zip his mouth, there'll probably be nothing to worry about.
For me, really, how do you think we would just be able to ensure? Because at the end of the day, people would still expect that if things tilt either ways, the pendulum.
I would advise that there should be heavy security presence in Kaduna, Southern Kaduna, from during the polls. I really would recommend that, because the truth of the matter is that even if some people have decided, look, we won't do anything about it, you have other people who are hotheads.
Should there be punitive measures also added to this heavy security? Because I heard the president say something today during their APC meeting about, people being shot at, and
trying to start ballot boxes.
If there are people who are trying to cause confusion on election days at certain places, should there be punitive measures? Maybe that would serve as a deterrent.
There are measures already.
There are punitive measures. People who are caught stealing ballot boxes are already.
How binding are these measures?
Well, there are measures. I know that right now, INEC, if ballot boxes are stolen, all the votes in that particular
away from the ballot boxes. I'm talking about these guys.
If there's any kind of violence, right now, the polls in that particular unit is null and void. So I think that's something that's why if you notice, in Osun and Ikiti, violence wasn't too much of a problem because they know that they will lose all the votes. So it's better for them to, which is why we're back to vote buying, as against,
But with all of these killings now, do you think that to redirect the steps and ensure that everybody comes out en masse, you would be expecting a statement from the state governor to assure the state residents that don't worry, everything will be fine?
Governor are we talking about?
Kaduna State Governor.
Yeah, you belong your own.
Even if he said it, there's a wide trust deficit that exists right now.
Yeah.
There's not even his genuine gestures of reconciliation, if there were any, would be viewed with the grandest measure of suspicion. So, I mean, he's dug himself into this hole. It's going to be very hard to take himself out of it.
Well, we're still looking at free, fair, credible elections, and security still remains a definitive element when we are talking about all of these and more. Thank you very much, Michael Famarotti. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. He's a security.
Peter Eigbedion.
Peter Eigbedion. Sorry, I had to do that. I beg your pardon.
You're Steve Harvey.
Thank you very much. Funmi Ayoola Dosunmu,
you.
YPP aspirant for House of Reps, Surulere constituency. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a short break, and when we return, it'll be time for the news, and right after that, Nigeria Decides continues. Stay tuned.